Today on Make Remote Work, we're talking with Valentina Valencia, the co-founder and CEO of Vaas, a company building the trust layer for Latin America's financial system. She was recently featured in Forbes 30 Under 30 for the work she's doing to modernize private credit infrastructure across the region. Valentina is operating in one of the most complex industries you can pick: asset-backed lending, compliance, verification, and cross-border financial workflows. And she's doing it all with a distributed team spread across countries such as Colombia, Argentina, Ecuador, Mexico, Peru, Panama, and the US. In this conversation, she breaks down how she hires across countries, how she keeps culture tight with a fully distributed workforce, and why remote work actually gives Voss an edge in a sector that traditionally expects physical offices and paper workflows. You're really going to enjoy this one. Let's get into it. All right. Welcome. Hello, Valentina. It is great to have you here on the podcast hosted by Rome. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad that I can finally see you in a call instead of just a DM.
Yeah, no, I'm excited about this one. Obviously we go back almost about a year now. That's when we first started, interacting with each other in Rome. Obviously you brought your company on, which we'll talk about in a second. But since that moment, you're a ball of energy. So I love everything that you bring to the table and have to say. And I'm really interested to talk about Voss and also just about how you make it work as the co-founder and CEO of that company. So we can just jump right into it. Give me a high-level overview of Voss and tell me essentially the moment you realized that this needed to be its own company and you started to form an idea around that.
So what we're trying to do is build technology, build infrastructure that delivers trust among the financial system. So if you think about, let's say Rome wanted to use its revenue to get basically an asset-backed facility on that, like basically get a credit facility, someone to lend you against that revenue. How do you prove that that revenue is real? How do you prove that that revenue is unique? How do you prove that this revenue has not already been pledged or sold to someone else? What we're trying to do is build the technology to make sure the financial transactions happen at scale in a way that it's secure. That is from like a high level perspective, what we're doing.
Awesome. Now, talk to me about your team. I know just from the background here that they're globally distributed. From the last time we spoke, I think you have teams in Ecuador, Argentina, the US, and Colombia. Anywhere else in the world?
Peru, Panama, and Mexico.
And how would you say hiring in a remote landscape sort of gives you an advantage to, as opposed to being locked into one geographic area? Like, how has hiring been for you? Do you find it more difficult? Do you find it more easier? Like, what does the process look like? And how are you able to build those teams in like that remote global landscape?
I think from like a very easy perspective, a lot of people like remote work. So finding people in the remote work era, I think it's easier than wanting to be in the physical office. So maybe that helps a little bit. Another big help is like I live in Colombia. And if I were to find the people in Colombia to build Vaas, it would be like an excellent pool of talent for what the Colombian talent pool people is. So if I'm looking at someone who's great at financial services, Colombia is great at financial services. I would be able to find people great in doing financial services. But if I want to find someone who has the experience of building fintech, perhaps I'm not going to be able to find that type of talent in Colombia just as much from the engineering talent, or I may be able to see it. But for instance, the majority of our engineering team came from Mercado Libre, came from Globant, came from a lot of the companies that are in Argentina, were born in Argentina, that were just first in a lot of the tech scene. So how do I get best of both worlds? Well, a remote work environment that allows me to find people in Colombia, finding people in Argentina, finding people in Mexico. So it's great to find people that are specific for what you need, that are able to understand the culture that Voss wants to build. That has been the best part.
In terms of like culture, how do you keep everybody aligned? Is there anything that you do specifically that, you really couldn't do without in terms of like a process? You just mentioned a bunch of different countries. I'm sure it's hard to get everybody together physically, if ever. So how do you, create that sort of sense of togetherness and cohesion amongst the team?
I think it's one of the easiest and hardest things to build. it's very easy when things are going well. It's very easy to go with the flow when people will, like, once you're in the hard times, it's really hard to keep, like, that's when the culture actually shows up. So I've had certain rituals, and right now we're going into a transformation of like, what does Vaas culture mean, like in 2.0. But for instance, every single person that joins Vaas, they have to come up with a presentation. We have all hands every Tuesdays. And so they always have to come up with a presentation that has nothing to do with work. So they have to come up with like anything
I love that.
about their personal life, and there's always questions at the end that sort of like determine if how you're going to be loved or hated within Voss, or how people are going to bully you, etc. But we make like very like stupid questions, or like very hypothetical questions, to figure out how does a person uh like answer. I'll give you one that we've had for a very long time. Like, what's the biggest animal that you can kill with your bare hands? Had to choose, or if you had to choose like a country in Latin America to erase, which one would it be? And so, like, it can be like very funny at the same time.
Yeah,
But that's one
I
of the
love
big
that.
things, which we can do basically doing through remote work, which is like we get on all hands every Tuesday, and like there's a perfect transcript of who said what, or almost perfect transcript
Right. Yeah.
of who said what at what time. And I think that's like very hard to get. I think there's pros and cons to remote work, but like one pro of remote work is being able to just every meeting have it recorded, and everyone who speaks, you can tell that they spoke and they said that.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, you get to leverage AI and you get to work it into your operation pretty seamlessly, right? There's not too much that you have to really learn to do that. It just either, like you said, starts automatically or you flip it on, and now, boom, you have a repository of data of your day to day operations or meetings really at your fingertips. So, that's definitely a positive advantage of that. In terms of your industry specifically, how does being remote and using all of the tools that we just mentioned in your specific industry help you, move things forward?
This is an actually a really good one. There's pros and cons to both. And I'd say one of the pros in terms of like having remote work is you're able to get talent from other places to do discovery from people that will probably don't have access to that country. So let's say if my people in Vaz don't have access to visas to go into the US, like just like the hurdle of getting the visa to get to travel to the US, spending like 5K on tickets plus hotels plus food, etc., is like you're starting to build some of that relationship like virtually, and then
Hmm.
you still have to do some like in-person stuff, but now you got maybe like 3 weeks,
Right.
4 weeks of work. And then you maybe just like in that one physical meeting, you get to like turn them over a little bit more. It's still way harder to build relationships remotely. It's way, way harder, but it at least like allows you to decrease the cost to build those relationships over a long period of time. So you're not spending
And
as
that's
much marketing, etc.
Yeah, I think that's totally true. Once people let their guard down and kind of start to embrace the technology as opposed to put up a barrier to it, they really can see how it can work for them. And it may be different than what they're used to, but obviously it has its advantages. I think we'll pause there. I mean, this has been a great, quick conversation, getting to know about you and the company. Anything else before we sign off?
I think everyone should be on Rome, regardless if they're remote or not.
Thank you very much for that. And that plug, I did not tell you to say that, so I just want to make that known. But appreciate the plug. Thank you, Valentina. It was a pleasure as always. I will talk to you soon in Rome. Take care.